Well, what is actually happening is a very brutal civil war now between the government and their supporters and the rebels and their supporters. And now, both sides are clearly guilty of regarding civilians as an incidental collateral damage, if you like. I think it's probably true to say that most of the casualties, we're talking about around 100,000 deaths, most of the casualties have been civilians, and very many of them, it's very hard to say how many, have been killed by the government's tactics of fighting the war by shelling and bombing civilian towns, because that's where they believe the rebels are.
I think what's crucial in the Western narrative on the Syrian conflict is that the line between combatants and civilians is really, really blurred. And I think I would argue that it is done for political reasons, because when we equate a mother who is nursing her baby somewhere in Homs and her male neighbor with a Kalashnikov who is attacking a nearby army checkpoint, you know, these two people, they may have the same political goals and aspirations, but one has taken up arms and the other one didn't. Isn't that the core distinction between combatants and civilians? Well, the distinction is between those who, as you say, have taken up arms and are using them actively. They are, if you like, legitimate targets for the regime trying to defend itself. But what is not acceptable is to simply attack civilian areas because that's where the rebels are hiding and say, well, it's not my fault if I kill civilians, because there's still a responsibility under international humanitarian law for any force, whether it's the rebels or the government, to try to make a distinction between combatants and civilians. That's a fair point. And since you mentioned the international law of war and the Geneva Conventions apply here, I think the Geneva Conventions make the distinction between combatants and civilians very clear. And I don't want it to oversimplify it, but in legal terms, combatants can be purposefully targeted and killed, while the government has the responsibility, and all the sides actually have responsibility, to protect civilians as much as possible. So when we have all these leaders, President Obama, Prime Minister Cameron, and others calling rebels civilians, I think that truly not only misrepresents the conflict, but that actually undermines the already fragile security that could be afforded to civilians.
Well, I don't think they're saying that the rebels are civilians. Of course, the rebels are, I mean, they don't always wear uniform, and that's what makes it so difficult. I completely accept. This is a very difficult context, an internal civil war in which to make very clear distinctions between combatants and civilians. But that doesn't absolve anybody from the responsibility of trying to do that. Equally, of course, it's not legitimate for rebels to use civilians to hide in and to use them as human shields. That's